Ladies and gentlemen, I have the great good fortune to bring Miss Stacy Dyson here to Poets of the East. Stacy, welcome.
Thank you.
You know, Stacy, I've seen you at this Zoom meeting and that Zoom meeting, always reading powerful work that speaks to the heart, speaks to your humanity. I've always wanted to talk to you a little bit more and learn a little bit about the artist of Stacy, kind of behind the poetry. So, if I could ask you, um, looking back at young Stacy in grade school or high school or college, whenever you want to go back to it, when did you realize that you had creative power that you really couldn't say no to?
Oh, that happened way before school. You know, I've been writing since I was 5.
Good for you.
And was pretty, I would imagine. I remember singing for my parents' friends when I was 3.
How nice.
So it's never not been there. It's just something that I've always done. Even when I was trying to decide career path. Little kids are with I want to be a cowboy, I want to be a ballerina, whatever. I was going to be a cowgirl, but I was going to be a poet too. I was going to be a ballerina, but I was going to be a poet too. When I got older, that morphed into, well, yes, I'm going to be a pediatrician, but I am going to be a poet too. So the poet part was always in there. The music part, I grew up surrounded by books and music. This is breathing. They said, and I honestly thought everybody in the world did this for the longest
How could
time.
you not?
Exactly. And was pretty shocked to find out that they don't.
Yeah, to me, one of the saddest parts of human life is when I ask someone, hey, what's new? What's going on? And they say, same stuff, different day. And, I've never had 2 days alike in my life. I haven't had 2 hours alike in my life. It seems to me that that is almost, I'm going to say, not appreciating the gift of life, you know?
I don't think it's a question of not appreciating. I think it's a question of people not being aware of who it is they are and what it is they can do and the effect that they can make. Because for the most part, we're socialized, go along, get along. Um, you are also socialized for the most part, especially if you're a woman, not stick your head up above the crowd, don't draw attention to yourself. That's changing a little bit, not nearly quickly enough for me, but um,
I
for
think
the
you've
for
been in the front lines of that particular battle for some time.
yeah, but mostly it's just people seem to have this idea. Okay, they've got this set path in mind, and they don't leave any time or imagination for, hey, what if I don't follow the beaten path? Then what happens? Or it's scared out of them, or it threatened in some cases out of them, or they don't see the advantage of it. The last one I really don't understand. How can you not see the advantage of not being like everybody else?
Well, I tell you, I heard, surprising enough, from my father, who was not a philosophical fellow, he actually quoted that ancient Japanese aphorism that the nail that sticks up gets pounded down. And I heard him say that, and it was, I thought, very out of character because he was an outspoken chap and he always had a story, a yarn. He was always organizing this and that. But I
Hmm.
thought that was a very, it spoke to his upbringing. It spoke to the fact that as a working class person, he always thought it was a good strategy to just go with the flow, get along, go along, that whole thing. And
Right.
It cost him a lot, I think, in his life ultimately.
I think it costs everyone a lot, and it during the pandemic, or while the pandemic was being acknowledged, um, the mad rush toward anything that was not the same. Okay, the mad rush toward we need music, we need art. It's like all this and this mad realization. Well, the people in those worlds, we've known this the whole time. You do not breathe, you do not exist, not for not with any sort of, how shall I say, flavor to your life, without art, without music. And then it's like the whole rest of the world kind of went, oh wow, really? You guys aren't insane. You're not wasting your time. You do have real jobs. And we need more and more and more of that. And then there was this heightened rush of artists putting their material out there and it being just literally gobbled up. And then once the pandemic slowed down and stopped being acknowledged as much, and all of that, is kind of like, oh, okay, so you guys can go back to playing, for a living. And the rest of us will do what makes the world turn. So that whole frame of mind, coupled with this mad, insane drive for money and power, uh, I can understand why people don't want to steer or encourage their children or the people that they care about around them to get into something like this. It will break your heart. I tell my students that all the time. If you're not doing this for love, don't do it. And even if you do it for love, like most things you do for love, you're going to get your heart broken.
Um, okay, so you began very young.
Hmm.
Wonderful. I did myself. Did you find outlets in the church, in the school, to use your writing, your art, your creative talents?
Oh yeah. Um, in school, it was I was in choir all the time. When I got into high school, I was in a special group, an off, our music department had, there was the mass choir, and then there was like girls ensemble, etc. Da, 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 da. So things like that. And I wrote all the time. Everything I know about performance, I learned in church. I grew up um, AME, which is like Southern Baptist Light, sort of.
Yeah. Make a
And
joyful noise, right?
absolutely, the Lord loves a party. Um, but I learned how to present in church. I never took formal singing lessons, but I was in choir all the time in church and in school. I learned how to work with my voice. I learned how to hold an audience, but the actual presentation, the poetry part, um, I wrote the odd little poem here and there. I wrote poems for extra credit in class, things like that. But I didn't start performing as such until I was at university. Um, I was writing along. My university had a talent show, and I decided, this is when I was young and stupid and didn't know enough to be terrified. and I decided, what the heck, let's go ahead and throw my reputation and caution to the wind and go ahead and do a couple of pieces. And I did it, and it was lovely, and it felt normal. It felt like something I was supposed to do. So all that was fine. But we were on our way home after, and my housemate said, "What did you think?" And I said, "I thought it was really nice." And she just looked at me really oddly and she said, "You got a standing ovation." And I said, "Really?" I thought they were just standing up because the room was crowded and, I was trying to get back to my seat. So that part of it like totally went over my head. Um, the outlets as such were probably there, but this isn't where I thought I was going to be. When I was at university, I went into university thinking medical school, and then found out rapidly that wasn't going to work. So then I switched to journalism. Um, but I was still doing the poetry. I had branched out into playwriting. I wrote my first play at university. And I think I must have been in my sophomore year. And I was sitting and I was waiting for a date to pick me up. And I was scribbling madly away. And this is where the woo woo mystical part of it comes in, because I very distinctly heard a voice say, "This is what you're supposed to be doing."
Cool. Cool.
My mother didn't think so, but
No, well.
my mother could have cared less about the mystical aspect of this revelation. Okay. Um, but to hear that voice and to know it didn't come as a shock, it came as an acknowledgement of what I already
Affirmation.
knew.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have had similar experiences myself, my friend. I had gone west to a meditation conference, and I thought while traveling in the West, this would be the perfect time. I had studied anthropology from when I was a kid. I had an uncle who was a frustrated anthropologist, taught history for a living, and he'd given me his anthropology books when I was in grade school. And I knew about the Dream Quest. So I said, I'm going to go up in the mountains and I'm going to stay there by God until I get my message, right? I'm
Okay.
camping out in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains in New Mexico.
Hmm.
And I literally spent my first night, right? I'm just up there and I'm waking up in the morning and here on this mountain path I was camped right next to, just me, a sleeping bag and a notebook, right? A notebook is what you need.
Right.
And and an indigenous person stops at the foot of my camp and says, I dreamt about you last night. You're going to go back to Florida, back to Miami, he said, and get a job in television. And I said, well, that's absurd. Now, the secret in my heart, I wanted to write in media, but I never told anybody because to work in television, you generally have to be related to somebody or have some serious kind of in. And
Right.
as a lower working class kid from the suburbs of Pittsburgh, that really was not in the
It was.
cards. And I said, I told him how it was impossible. And I said, well, who put you up to this? Because in fact, I was from Miami. And he
Hmm.
said, well, I'm coming from Arizona. What are you talking about? I said, well, my friends are right down the hill. And he goes, no, no, that's New Mexico. I'm no, I don't know any of your people. Long story short, I got a job in television, and that was my launch in the world of video and media and radio. Okay, enough about that. Now, so when you were in college, did you write besides the plays? Did you write journals? Did you write newspapers? Did you write? Well, of course, you wrote essays and stuff.
Oh yeah. I mean, I had a column for a bit in the school newspaper, and that was fun because I got to write outside of what people expected of me, actually. Um, and then, the usual essays. I took one poetry class, which I knew was going to be a waste of my time, when the professor told me, and I quote, "Why, yes, I've never read Nikki Giovanni, but I understand she's very good." Like, okay, we're done. Um,
Yeah, I had a similar experience, but yes,
no,
great, great.
that class was, oh no, a waste of my time. I actually wrote my very first collection of poetry in my Black Studies 1 class because the instructor was so boring. He would come in, he would write his notes on the board, and then he would just teach from the notes. So basically, all I had to do was walk in. It was a 90-minute class. So all I had to do was walk in, write down everything that was on the board, and I was free for the next 85 minutes.
So I have to
Uh,
ask, these
mhm.
early plays, were they what I'm going to call relationship plays, or were they, should we say, socially aware plays?
uh, Not relationship plays. I mean, the first play that I wrote, um, the only play I wrote while I was at university, was based on, loosely based on, Ntozake Shenge's For Colored Girls Who Have Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Was
Oh,
About.
wow. Yeah.
And it was called For Every Sister Who Got Burned. And it was the same format. It was um, these, it was poetry tied together by stories, or stories, tied together by poetry, depending on how you look at it. And that kind of gave me a taste and an excuse, for lack of a better phrase, for working in that longer form, for working in more in dialogue. And so the idea of, first of all, interpersonal, not necessarily romantic, but just interpersonal, and then very, very much the idea of, as a woman, how do you navigate through the world? Because that's a different vibe altogether. And those stories, those songs had always been important to me, but it started to be more important because what I was seeing was not enough time being devoted to it. It became very much a case of, well, you know, I've always been okay, if you need it done, do it yourself. I wasn't seeing enough plays about women being who they were and talking to other women. I saw a lot of plays with women explaining themselves, and I didn't really see the need for that. I take it back. Explaining is fine, defending is not.
Right.
And, a lot of, of the interplay between men and women. Okay, well, you know, Shakespeare is based on nothing but. I needed to talk about women coming to terms with who they were and telling those stories. And so that became more of a push than anything else.
Now, did you have opportunities to have these read or performed?
I made as much opportunity as I could for a very
Sure.
long time
Sure.
to perform. And there are always outlets, but um, even once I'd left university, I was more focused on writing, not performing. It wasn't until later down the road where I decided, okay, I need to incorporate that because in my mind, there are these divisions. And so there are the paper poets and the reading poets and the performance poets. The paper poets and the reading poets, Jesus loves them too. Maybe not as much, but Jesus loves them too. Um, and I'm going to get in trouble for
Back to
saying
a
that, but
joyful noise. Absolutely.
okay.
Absolutely. I totally get it.
But for me, it's not really finished till it's out in the wind. It's not enough for it to be down on paper. That's lovely. But if you're lucky, maybe 100 people will hear it, will read it, you know. Um, there's no connect, there's no vibe, there's no moment. Not that you're going to see. Um, and so it was like, okay, you need to find a way, to get these words out there. And I got into my head that I wanted an audience that would grow with me. So I started doing schools, tons and tons and tons of schools. And that kind of snowballed into, uh, word gets around, so
Now,
uh,
is this you doing readings or is this
this is
staging pieces?
me, both actually, mostly
Excellent.
readings, but along about in my, how old was I? Late 30s. I started a uh, women's arts consortium called Dragon's Wing. And so that was very much a case of, okay, um, putting plays together, putting performances together, putting, shows together. Um, and
Good
Dragon's
for
Wing was in
you.
existence
Good for you.
for, I think, I want to say 7 years. And then the thing about it is that you do that enough and your career starts taking a back seat to what you're putting together for other people. Once I got sick, I was just totally burnt out and exhausted. And so, like, okay, we're done. And I moved to California and it was like, telling all of my friends, this will never happen. I'm doing this anymore. This will never happen again. And then, yeah, make plans and watch God laugh.
Yeah.
And so then came Page to Stage Women's Words again. Um, all women putting together, workshops and performances and, on and on and on. And we ran that for about 5 years. And then, again, um, ended that one. Never doing this again. I said to myself, I'm done. That's it. I've made my mark. Because the big thing, quite honestly, was I was brought up very much with the idea of bringing honor to your family name. Okay. I wanted it to mean something to be a Dyson trained poet. And so I had gone ahead and I had made that happen. And, I had done the plays and, I'd been a poet laureate and, all this stuff. And it was lovely. So it's like, okay, that's it. No more, I'm just going to write and write for me. And that will be it. And then came Tesoro. So this is beyond my control. So my current arts consortium, right now I keep recruiting people. I think we've got 32 members
Excellent.
internationally right now. Not just good women poets, because good women poets are all over the place. You can find them anywhere. I didn't want just good. I needed fire singers. I needed women who were making change, making strides, not just in poetry. And so that's who I'm working with now. And they're all better poets than I am. And I
Well,
love being able to say that.
well, let's not be too modest.
I say that and people say, that's not false modesty. I know exactly how good I am. Okay. And all of these women are better. That's fine. That's the way, this was set up. I am also just basically not capable of not helping other people get their words into the wind. If I just focused on my own career, then you and I would be having this conversation with me in the south of France or something like that. Um, I was also raised with right comes responsibility. I'm one of the few people on the planet who is able to do what she was born to do. I don't have the right to not share that with other people and try and help them get to whatever level it is they're trying to get to, or to open doors if I can, or to make a way if I can. Um, it's not in my DNA. I don't know how to. It's like breathing. I don't know how to not do that.
Oh, if there were only more like you, my dear.
I think probably one of me is all the world is really ready to handle. Um, the, the 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 idea of
Good for
more than one
you.
of me terrifies a number of people, myself on the list. So
I uh, I had a somewhat I will say comparable, not so much similar experience. Uh, Basically being drawn into the media uh, to do work that I really wanted to do, but I just didn't think was possible. Um, During the Vietnam War days, I was writing passionate anti-war poetry. Sadly, I have to keep writing passionate anti-war poetry, but that's another story.
Yeah,
But I was writing, and in the Bohemian area of Miami, there is actually a Bohemian area of Miami, or at least there used to be, called
really.
Coconut
Okay,
Grove. Yeah, it was. It
okay.
actually had good people there. At any rate, there were poetry competitions there. Now, I hated the idea of competition. I think that that's
Don't get me
just
started on
stupid.
poetry competition.
But because every voice, there's an ancient aphorism that every voice is sacred to God. I think everyone has something to say. And but at any rate, so the forum that one participated in was this competition. So here I am hating the competition idea, but wanting to be able to share, right? So I'm sharing my work, and darn it, 4 weeks in a row I took number one. Now I wasn't trying to be number one. I was just trying to read a poem that I believed in, right? So at
Hmm.
the fourth one, and I'm like rolling my eyes the whole time, what really? Okay, and the prize was, a quart of beer at the local pub. Well,
Hey,
I don't even like beer
you know,
anyway, so
I
that
I
was
have worked venues that paid less than that. So
so anyway. A gentleman comes up to me after I get off the stage and he says, "Richard, I really like your work. Um, I produce shows at the local public broadcast station, and I was wondering if you'd be interested in having a radio show." And you know how sometimes you talk without thinking about it, your mouth just does these things,
uh-huh, all the
and my
time.
mouth said, "Absolutely, positively." He said, "Great. What do you want to do?" And he's thinking a poetry show and that sort of thing. And I said, again, without thinking, my mouth just went off and said a science fiction comedy show called Martian Ambassador and the Captured Chorus. And
Okay,
he was as surprised as I was, or vice versa.
I'm a little shocked myself, Richard.
And so then he says, "Well, why the captured chorus?" I said, "Well, look, of all the actors and actresses I know, I don't know who will be able to come and participate. So whoever comes, they're captured."
Okay,
And so I had the capability. I wrote for a year a live science fiction comedy show for public broadcast in Miami. And then when I sufficiently annoyed the station manager, who didn't really like my politics, um, to fire me right after a show, the ironies of life are such that the new comedy group that he hired to replace my spot, they called me up and said, "Richard, we really like your work. Would you write with us?" So the very next week I was back. Needless to say, it did not please the station manager at all. "What the hell are you doing here? I
some
told you."
some people cannot be made happy. It's an unfortunate fact of life.
Well, so tell me, are you still writing plays as well as poetry?
Um, I have had a play in the works for the last, oh gosh. I wrote the one play at university. I wrote one after that that ended up winning a playwriting festival. And that
Oh,
one was called Fanny's Girls, a 4-1-1 and 5-part attitude. And this one was 5 women just talking about being women and the types of women that they were and how, again, how they were navigating through life. Um, and then there was always meant to be a play. There will be at some point called August 5000. When I was probably along my late teens, early 20s, um, my sisters and I learned how to play 500, card game 500. Well, we morphed it into 5,000 and we used to play all night and have these absolutely fantastic, far-reaching conversations while we were playing. And so when I get around to doing it, August 5000 is about one of those marathon, card nights. Um, the more my poetry changes, the less attractive playwriting becomes to me, mostly just because I can get more done in the short form and I can get it done quicker. And I can also guarantee, I can't get on an open mic, um, whether it's live you know, or virtual. Can't get on and read a play. Okay. And then having, you know, put on minor sort of effort. Just the time, it's so time consuming. Um, and so, and the other thing so people say, well, what about a one woman show? Kind of, sort of. Okay. If I'm up on stage for 2.5 hours, then yeah, that's a one woman show anyway. Okay. So that's about as close to playwriting as I get. But right now, it's about the poetry. And even if I was going to write another play besides August 5000, at this point, it would still be very heavily, heavily laden with poetry. So the the push right now is another book. Um, no, I've done, 1.5 million. I think I've got what, 7 chapbooks or so. But what my nephews call a real book. I've got two of those. So the third book, which is called Because the Sun Would Not Move, is being worked on now. It should have been finished by now. I meant to go to Colombia and finish writing it. I had like this whole plan. Okay. Um, and again, you want to see God laugh, make plans. So the time and the venue and the adventure of writing that, finishing that in Colombia got put on eternal hold. I don't know when that's going to happen. Um, but as usual, all I'm finding out is the poems don't care where I am. They're going to come when they feel like coming. I'm also not writing, and this always happens. I'm not writing the book I admit to write. Um, I'll start out with a theme. This happened. I did a chapbook in a show called Por Esencia. And I went into the studio. We were going to do the CD, and then there was going to be a chapbook, and then there was going to be a show. So I went into the studio, and I'm recording, all these poems, and they were fine, and they sounded good, but it didn't feel right. And so I walked in one morning, and I did the title piece, Por Esencia, and walked out thinking, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And so all of the poems that needed to be in that's what I ended up, you know. Um, the the book that I was doing was supposed to be a collection of some of my older, what I call flirt and dirt pieces. Okay. Um, Por Esencia ended up being exactly what I had been wanting, needing to do: self realization and self image, and being a Black woman who was talking about what it meant to be a Black woman in this space, in this time, philosophically, in love, out of love, self image, historically. And because the sun would not move, it's turning out to be the same thing. Because the sun would not move is supposed to be a whole collection of poems about me moving from San Diego to, when I started it, El Paso. That's not what it's turning into. Um, and so I've just learned, somewhat late in life, I grant you, just let the poems do what the poems are going to do and stop trying to dictate things that are beyond my control.
My dear,
Mhm.
we've learned a little bit about the marvelous author, playwright, poet, uh, Miss Stacy. Would you consider reading us some of your work?
No, Rick, actually, I'm going to turn this off and go back to bed. Um,
Best answer I've had yet.
I am naturally contrary. What can I say? Sure.
Hey, listen,
I'd
I hear
I'd
you.
be happy. I'd be happy to. Um, so what I've got for you guys this morning, I've got some poems from my first and second book, Lovely and Suffering. Is the first one. Follow Me on This is the second, and then some of my older stuff. Um, and then because it was sort of kind of the launch of a major change in voice for me, Pone Essential, you know. Pone Essential has become the poem that ends almost every show that I have done for the last, gosh, um, for about the last 20, 25 years.
Wow.
Pone Essential, and it just, yeah, it was that important, is that important, what I do and who I am. But I'm going to start off with something from Follow Me on This. Show the book. So my publisher says, why
Nice.
didn't you show the book?
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
and I hate titles, so I don't bother.
To each their own.
From the time I was a little girl, I heard two things: be more, be better. Whether it was dress, behavior, speech, grades, whatever it was. As a girl, I was expected to be more, be better. See, you were told boys could slough off. It was okay because boys would be boys. But girls, girls had to be women. You weren't even given that choice of an in between. We had to know how to take care, be strong, take care, be present, take care, pull the race forward, take care, be more, be better all time. I would have enjoyed hearing at least once, be more about yourself, be better about doing things for you. I would have enjoyed hearing at least once, be more appreciated, be better about who you let into your heart and your life and your bed. I would have appreciated hearing at least once, you don't have to be more of anything or better at everything. You are a Black woman. Let them come to you. I don't see that happening anytime soon. And I am sorry for my little sisters who grow up under the burden of be more, be better, be more, be better, be more, be better, because it's never going to be for us or to us. We are world over, centuries older, the hand that rocks the cradle. We are somewhere in the background of every man who has ever taken power. We are the strong ones, the unassailable ones, the ones who keep on going, keep on kicking, keep on ticking, keep on fighting. We have to do more. We have to be better because the world collapses without us. We have to do more. We have to be better because we know in our blood and bones that civilization does not exist without us. We have to do more and be better just to stay one step behind. And all the do more, be better guarantees nothing. We are still paid 69 cents on the dollar. We are still ignored as if we do not exist in policy and opinion. When we are assertive, then we are bossy and aggressive. When we are demanding of our rights, we are unfeminine troublemakers. When we, God forbid, express an opinion that does not fall into lockstep with whatever the current thought and policy is, and never mind that said policy affects our health, our rights, our bodies, we are called traitor, ingrate, bitch, and weak. We are none of those things. We are simply forever, forever trying to be more, be better, 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 be better.
Oh, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful, Stacy.
Yeah.
Really.
Um, so I was, as we were so impacted by the pandemic because there was nothing else to do. So I wrote a book called Lovely and Suffering. And the title comes from I needed a definition. I was trying to think of a way to explain what was going on. Um, and this is what I ended up with, which ended up being the title piece. I want to stop dreaming their names. I want to stop breathing their last words. I want to stop washing my hands for 20 seconds of what's going on and precious Lord, take my hand. I want to stop sitting on conference calls numb or crying because another fake 911 lynching murder was top news when I turned on my phone. I tell a lot of lies about allergies these days. I want to be able to call Brianna's name without aching and being sick, crying for 2 hours. I need people to stop reminding me that Jesus was a rebel. Jesus was a warrior. Keep my Savior's name out of your mouth if you cannot use it properly. I am exhausted in the search for just a bit more calm, just a little more reason. I am not out of patience. I am finished being patient. I am tired of warning you to learn the difference. There is nothing more volatile than a Black woman who has made friends with both her beauty and her pain. And we are lovely and suffering right now. We are lovely and suffering right now. We are lovely and suffering right now.
Wow. Thank you.
So that particular theme about Black women and the way we define ourselves and the way that people need to understand, you know, the whole thing of the strong Black woman, okay, um, has become is but is now being recognized is so dismissive of the way that we feel. We're not strong all the time. We can't be strong all the time, but the world calls upon us to be that, and we're not supposed to be angry about it. We're just supposed to take it. And so a lot of the poems in Lovely and Suffering and a handful of the poems in Because the Sun Would Not Move are about saying, I get to be mad and I'm going to continue to be. And all of these other things are mixed in with it. Um, one of the things that happened during the pandemic, there were so many things that broke my heart. But the thing that made the biggest impact on me, the most heartbreaking thing, was Breonna Taylor. Um, that still is probably the thing that I cannot say that it defined. Um, I can say it sort of underlined the way that I was feeling, that a number of people were feeling about the way this country was treating Black people and Black women specifically. And because she was so young, it wouldn't have made any difference. But the fact that she was young made it worse. The fact that she was not out in the streets, no, she was asleep. And it very much underlined the fact that one of the reasons we're so angry is that there is no safe place for us. 27 erased by 8 equals blood on Daniel Cameron's hand. 27 erased by 8 equals no more dreaming and still no justice, even now. 27 erased by 8 only equals more struggle and rest in power. And I know that mother's tears falling century down century did not keep you safe. I am sorry that our soft voices and white gloved hands and choir singing were not enough to keep you safe. sorry that trying to fit into this tapestry, sacrificing to fit into the supposedly sweet and welcoming tapestry was not enough. Our not being angry was not enough to keep you breathing. And I don't know what you had planned for your birthday, but I do know that you were a woman, not a symbol. I know that sometimes you must have fussed with your hair, fussed at your man, fussed about your job, got loud with your girls, got out in the streets singing and swinging and blinging so you could forget about your day. Laid up in the bed some days, watching the rain, making love, making plans. I know that as a black woman, there were some days you couldn't take it anymore. Felt like you couldn't see one more horror, but you stayed in the game. Back the next day, did your job. I know there were days when you got tired of being a black woman because that's what black women do. That's what and who we are. We did everything we were supposed to. We trusted and prayed and held our heads up and made way out of no way. We took it. We worked with it. We held on, held it down, did the work, held it down, held it together, held on and on and on while this country, this place did every wicked thing it could to tear us apart. We did everything we could, used every way we know, every day and night, living the way we are supposed to live to save our children, and it still wasn't enough. Are holding it down, fighting the system, setting the streets on fire, soft words, bowed heads, white gloves, swallowed humiliations, words and tears and songs and suffering wasn't enough. The way we have been told we need to live our entire lives wasn't enough. You were still not safe. You were our daughter, our auntie, our little sister. No, not our mother. Never anybody's mother. We tried everything. You died anyway. Right now, you are on your way to becoming an icon. Your name will go down as a martyr to the cause. I am truly, truly sorry for that because no one deserves such a hellish honor. 27 erased by 8 should not equal political expedience, cover up, lies, does not justify or explain the dirt they tried to bury you with. 27 erased by 8 and wrong, and a mother who will never sleep again because her baby sleeps too young and forever. Why? For what? All she wanted, all anyone ever wants is to be human, flawed and free. Human, flawed and alive and free to be human. The Karen phenomenon I had to write about
Oh, of course. I'm
because,
going to ask you to let me read one or two for you too, but please go ahead and
oh yeah,
continue, my dear. Those are so powerful.
there are three Karen poems, and I had to write three.
Wow.
A colleague, yeah, a colleague of mine, while I was writing the book, had written on Facebook that she was just, he'd had it with some Anglo woman in her office, and so I wrote her and said, "I'm going to write you a Becky poem, just to make you feel better one of these days." Ha 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 ha. Ha. And I ended up writing, like Karen and Becky, interchangeable as far as I'm concerned. I wrote one of those and I sent it to her just to make her laugh, basically. And I thought, that's it. That's cute. One and done. We're fine. And then she posted again. There had been another situation. I'm like,
Oh
okay,
no.
so yeah, so here came Karen 2. And I'm thinking, okay, two's good. Let's not beat a
Right,
horse
right.
here. And then Sharon Osbourne lost her mind. I'm like, okay, here comes Karen 3. There are 3 Karen pieces. And quite honestly, Richard, the way the world is going, there will probably be 30 more. But for right now, there are only 3. So this is Karen 2.
Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being back away slowly from the cookout, nobody needs to get hurt, and 10 being me offering physical violence to elders, as in, I will slap your grandma and mine in the middle of Main Street at high noon for this. My irritation level is at about 45 and rising. All this crying and pearl clutching got me in a non conciliatory frame of mind. Miss me with that noise, please. Why is my pain only validated by your distress? When black, brown women cry for their babies, why is it necessary for white tears to validate the experience? Is it because we've done it so often that our tears are invisible, don't count anymore? Why is any conversation always at your behest? We've been wanting to talk for centuries now. Why are our lives suddenly worth taking notice? Because you finally decided to take notice. Well, then it must be important. Check it. One white woman got upset one morning, spilled her coffee, got national headlines, and changed the law. We get up upset every morning, every hour of every day, spill all the tea, and get called gossips, abrasive, nasty, and non pleasing. I was raised up carefully, well born, and well bred. So the most I can say to that is you may personally kiss it right here, because F that is. Yeah, go ahead and laugh. I have ancestors to answer to. Sorry, Grandma. Speaking for sisters everywhere, keep our names out of your mouths. Because in case you hadn't got the memo, whatever you start, we are going to finish. Don't waste your tears on trying to impress us with your pain. We live where you only visit. And tourists, quite frankly, are not welcome. Sisters bleed, bond, and back each other up. Y'all want to eat the cake and not clean up the kitchen, and get upset when your dainty selves catch hands or our ambitious dreams without stopping to drink at the river of your opinions. Some of y'all so weak you can't even take a Becky between the eyes. Can't get hit with the truth without crying about your stress level. Keep self importantly screaming, you're the one making it about race. Well, yeah, because it is. It always has been. You want to call me sister? Prove you fight like I do. That's right, you have to prove it. Don't want to see your pink cat hat or your notorious RBG t shirt. Show me oppression turned into beauty marks, like children with full bellies and laws that protect everybody. Show me relationships full of truth, not convenience. Show me your soul's tears hit the earth and birth renewable energies like gold and water and real love. You want me to call you sister? Listen to me. Stop using me. Celebrate who I am without making me use your mirror. Back me up. Honor and sing my songs too. Stop trying to be me when it suits or is fashionable. Just be real. Do you. And if that sounds like too much, well, let's put it this way. If after using my milk to suckle your children, after raising those children so they could sell or slave me and mine, after scrubbing your floors and your clothes, you could go to fundraisers where I got talked about as the problem. After being given the backseat in movements I bled out over, after moving ahead as an exemplar of my sisters, only to be judged by the standards by which the world celebrates everything you do or say or decide to be, if after all that you decide we're ungrateful or impatient or too angry, you know what? You may personally, can unreservedly kiss it right here. Because F that S. Sorry, Grandma.
Wow. My gosh, dear. I I was living in Miami in the 80s, and this is the wild cocaine cowboy days, and people are getting shot all over the place. And there was a, I was working at a computer company doing traffic control computers,
Hmm.
and in this facility, there was what I'm going to call English American management, and then there was the worker bees, and it was the delineation was just huge. And these fellows from Minnesota had not just epithets for African Americans and Hispanics, they had the same thing for Europeans as well. And I heard these guys use racist language about indigenous peoples as well. And
Mm.
you know, call me naive. I'm a blue sky liberal, believe passionately in human rights. I was so appalled to see this, complete out racism in this office. Well, come along. The Miami Police Department murdered a black man on a motorcycle, and then to cover it up, ran over the motorcycle 2 or 3 times, as if somehow that was going to, put them off the hook. And
Yeah.
I tried to have conversation to help people understand. I have training in anthropology. I have training in behaviorism. I know why tribal barriers and tribal attitudes create friction, but I also know that that tribal difference can be amazing, can be wonderful, can be, the subject of amazing appreciation. And I thought, why the hell doesn't some anthropologist, why doesn't some behaviorist address this? Why don't they explain to people why there are these racial barriers, but they needn't lead to deaths? And having no one stand up to do that, I thought I better do it myself. So I wrote this. Like I say, this goes back a ways. I wish it was, well, It's called Behaviorist Perspective: The Causes of Racism. The troop, or group, the clan's glad hand, the sign of 9, the grip in the dark, the posted mark informs the stable state of norms. Remembering the frames of membrane games, brain disguises, shade your eyes in apple pies, it sizes the territory, the turf. Well, the good should. Our side of town, our group is right in the sight of good God's smile. Even sunlight reviles your kind outside the pure to lure with your kind's lazy, stupid stunts. A sparrow of a different hue could be torn and clove in two by a few of another blue hunt. The strength, bounding, bonding, unicellular life in multicellular strife. Responding beside him ties the atoms so tight, minute, molecular might, and chooses in precise measure who will sleep with tonight. Beehives survived by tribes trance. The queen's romance excludes the rude outsider, protects the provider, determines the rider of the queen's desire, embolden invaders, reduce the chance for the tribe to advance. Social groups and baboon troops and fishy schools know who the foe is, when to go, who's the friend, where's the end. The rules used, training fools by gene and team wish, that's culture stish. It keeps the Portuguese man of war banging on the door. It explains to the colony who to hang on to and why. Cultural clash, like red ants and black as a reason to attack, is a common step to keep hep to good guys and bad. But isn't it sad how often the supportive social ties, the tools of molecular rules can conceal the lack and leak of the social contract to the greater stack? The organs of your hand would be foolish to war or inflict harm on the arm. Could the leg force the knee to submit or flee? Could the brow to the forehead say, drop dead, begone, amscray? And then, in confusion, sway against the neighbor's arrayed. As this is to make a fist to relate the cultural trait, a boundary in this or any country. Take Humpty Dumpty. He's really something to relate to the ground with a loud cracking sound. Unicellular or multicellular, in clothing and in motion, you're expressing the notion of your tribe. It doesn't hide, wouldn't try. But membranes even say, if you lean over easy this way, together is stronger, lives happier longer. Cultural rifts needn't cause tiffs, or express fists in pain what it is when they mean the support of us. They needn't bleed trust, or force us to must the membrane's edgy thrust. But if you say it must, symbiosis is being, osmosis its meaning, surely you know this. There's no relief in grief. Let tribal libel cease. Extend the grace of space. The use of social bonding to unite is great. But even edges meet and act to attract the surging urge to merge. Behavior's perspective, the causes of racism. And as I spent my life as a teacher, I talked to a lot of people. And even though as a progressive, one-worlder, a humanist, it still makes me so sad to see how much people still have to learn. One other one I want to read you because I think it's gives the joke a different spin, if you will. This is I was in an anti-war group opposing the Iraq War. It was one and then two, and generally this broad coalition got along pretty well. But sadly, our Jewish friends and our Arab friends were having trouble getting along, and I wanted to try to build a bridge. I wanted to try to invite these folks to understand that, while everybody has a argument, if you will, there are things that we should do together. So I wrote this. Okay, we had this meeting and it worked. I asked them to do one thing. I said, please, folks, be prepared to listen twice as much as talk. Be prepared to assume that the other person is trying to preserve their friends and their family and their children. And if you can do that, if you can be prepared to listen, and if you can be prepared to listen, then I'll have everybody come and speak. Well, it worked, and we had this marvelous discussion, and everybody got along because the hotheads, the really vile people, didn't come, and people who wanted to make common ground did. Okay, so I'm so happy, right? I'm beyond myself, so happy that this actually worked. I got the Palestinians and the Jewish folks, they come together and talk, and nobody had a fight because it was awkward when in a peace rally people were coming close to fighting. Sort of blew the joke,
A little bit.
So as I'm leaving, right, I have to say I was immodestly pleased at how well it went. Well, a young man came over to me and he said, "So Richard, that really worked. I mean, I'm really kind of amazed." And I said, "Yeah, I'm really, really pleased. I'm just so pleased that people were prepared to talk." And he goes, "Well, so obviously you're a Jew, right?" Which I tell you, it completely deflated any alienation I had had. So
Yeah.
I wrote this. This is called, I thought you were a Jew. I'm a Jew. I'm a Buddhist. I'm a pagan. And what's truest, I'm a Christian and an animist and sometimes a philatelist, a Tibetan and a Hindu. And no matter what you do, I think I like what you do. God, I think she's very open-minded. I'm reminded when St. John's at stake, I'm calling Blake. And when Luther calls, I'm an Eskimo too. At least that's the least I can do. Wear a ghost shirt to my baptism when Martin causes a schism. I'm a Muslim and a Druid. My position's rather fluid. I'm a Sikh and a Taoist. Of that I think I'm proudest. A capitalist and a pinko, or at least sometimes I think so. Sometime I'm agnostic, a Rastafarian Coptic, a Methodist contrarian, or even a librarian, a sectarian Siberian who often turns to Mecca while counting on Kabbalah to get him to Shambhala, a Catholic Baptist evangelist, a Dunker agrarian fundamentalist, a Seven-Day Adventurist, Scientologist apologist, juggling snakes with a Lady of the Lakes, while praying aloud at Delphi, a Mithraic tantric yogi, a Jasmine playing boogie, a close insight to God, or at least that's what we thought, a Confucian and a Shinto, at least that's what I'm into, a Calvinist and a Navajo with a nodding wink to Xanadu, a Cherokee, a Swabian, Swinburgian, Zoroastrian Hussite, a Theosophist and a Thelemite, spilling celestial, spiritual dynamite. So I felt a little better after that.
One would imagine.
So when a young poet comes up to you and says, Stacy, you know, this poetry stuff, it seems like an awful lot of work and nobody appreciates it. Is it worth me doing? What do you say to them?
Yes, it really doesn't need to go beyond that. Um, a thing is what it is. So, yeah, I can sit there and spin War and Peace for an hour and a half, or I can just give them the answer, which is yes. If I'm feeling expansive, it's yes, absolutely.
It is so inspirational to hear you and to hear your work with a little depth and more than a piece or two. Um, I was wondering if you'd favor us with one or two more before we call it a day.
Sure. Um, I'll take us out with Por Inocencio. And I have to give a little bit of background on this. I ended up doing a venue that I hadn't been scheduled to do. A friend of mine was supposed to do it, and she had to cancel at the last minute. And she called and said, "Can you cover this?" And I said, "Sure." And so I ended up rocketing into, I'm wanting to say, Texas, um, with this is ages ago, with two other poets, and I'm sitting in the back seat, and I am sewing up my backpack, and not really. I'm not a conversationalist. If it's one on one, cool. If there are two other people who can speak to each other, I have other things to do. So I'm sitting back there and I'm sewing my backpack. And out of all the stuff that they say, one question comes out: what made you be a poet? Now everybody gets the question of why are you, or that sort of thing. But what made you be a poet? And I had to think about that. And so I ended up writing this poem that night, premiering it the next day. And it has ended, as I was telling you, it has ended just about every show that I've done for over 20 years. The usual question is why? What made you be a poet? I've heard about how death turns some people, jail time, bad fortune. You can't claim any of that. I am a poet because even at 5, you know when the Lord is talking to you. I am a poet because God laid his hand on me and said, "Here am I. Now speak." So if you hear something in this poem you know and believe, say amen. If you hear something you don't know but want to believe, sing wow. You don't know and can't believe, then tip your waiter and prove you tried to keep the Trump the hell out of office, so you have done something useful with your sorry self. I am a poet because love laid its light on my parents' marriage. They held each other's hearts like jewels, polished with 5 girls, money problems, fights, and good times, so that when my mother said no to the chemo, no to the surgery, no to the cancer, she died smiling in my father's arms. I am a poet because every 7 seconds a woman is raped, because every 2 minutes a child is molested, because every half hour somebody dies alone. And every hour on the hour, government commits genocide while big business pats itself on the back. because I applaud innovation, but tradition is the fire at which my soul warms itself. I am a poet because my nephew's smiles hang the stars. I have friends and sisters. Small job it is in life to mess with me all the time because my baby misses me so bad when I'm away and loves me back home so sweet. I am a poet because using the language properly is like good sex. If you can't stroke it, kiss it, taste it, and then lay it down till it screams with every intended passion, keep your damn mouth shut. I am a poet because of Aretha Franklin, Langston Hughes, Mahalia Maya, and Dylan Thomas. Mary Evans, Sonia Sanchez, Gato Barbieri, Nora Jones, Duke Ellington, Nikki Giovanni, and Shaka Khan. Because of Alexander Dumas, Père et Fils, Raymond Chandler, Tina Marie, and Johann Sebastian Bach. I am a poet because when Smokey sang, "Let me be the clock for the time of your life," every woman in the world said, "Tick tock, baby." I am a poet because when I was wrong, my parents did not medicate, therapy, or offer alternative behaviors. They smacked my hand, whipped my butt, and made me hold my head up to say, "I'm sorry." I'm a poet because I am a black woman in a white world whose prayers to the ancestors bring down fire from the sky that I kiss into the diamonds I want to hang in your ears. Because the words retard, fag, slut, nigga bitch are still accepted and recognized parts of conversation. I'm a poet because Sacagawea got jacked up on the gold dollar. Cleopatra was a sister. But because rejecting European standards of beauty, I roll out every morning so damn fine that I am illegal in all 50 states and most of the U.S. territory. I am a poet because I know God, because I know He laid His hand on me and said, "Here am I. Now speak."
Wow. Beautiful. Just beautiful, my friend. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. That's what a powerful way to end a presentation. Uh Goodness. I'm so honored that you would join me for this chat.
I'm flattered that you asked.
Well, my dear, I try to bring on the very, very best poets I find. And even knowing, even expecting just miracles of talent, um, I would be foolish to say anything, but you are a wonder, my dear. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I will end by saying, on behalf of Poets of the East, it has been an honor and a treasure to have you with us. Thank you for your time. And I know your voice will shine and touch
It
an up.
better. I've got bills to pay.
Ah! Very good. Thank you so much. And on behalf
You
of
are so
Poets of the
welcome.
East, I have to say thank you again. Bye bye.